Okay guys, I am back. I went outside for a while and I let this dry outside for a while. It's not totally dry, I can still feel it's a little damp, but I'm going to do the second layer. I also forgot, there's been times, I just can't tell you because it changes, but there have been times, and I think it's actually when I use the beach ball and not a balloon underneath, that sometimes when this paper dries, the paper shrinks and it cracks because the balloon inside or the ball inside actually doesn't shrink. So I can't remember which happens when, and so you might have a crack, and you know what, that's fine. What you do if you have a crack after, especially after the second layer, is you just take out whatever's inside the balloon, or if you have a beach ball, you can do it with the beach ball. I forgot to tell you that. You'll just take that out and then you just kind of patch up that thing with paper mache again. Okay? I'm also going to show you this. Move it slowly so you can see, but my paper mache mix is separated. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's like water at the top and the chunky stuff is underneath. I don't know if you guys can tell. I'm like digging it up. You guys can see it coming to the surface. Anyway, that's what happens to paper mache after a while if you just don't mix it. So I have to mix it again. Check the consistency again. So I'm trying to get all the stuff off of the bottom so it's not just too wet on top. Once I mix it all again, and it's you know, a little bit thicker than milk, then we're good. But I was going to show you, so for what I'm going to use right now is paper. I make leather journals, and so I have a bunch of paper that I rip off the ends of them. So I already have a bunch of stuff from journals I made a long time ago that it's just pieces. But I wanted to show you that if you have scrap paper at home, so I also made a planner for this year, and I made, these are just my example pages, and they were just my experimenting pages. So they're scrap paper now. But I wanted to show you something. So if you guys have stuff from your printer or wherever, whatever paper you have, some paper doesn't tear as well as other paper. Like newspaper tears really nice. Just depends on what paper you're using, but sometimes they tear it, and sometimes they tear all funky, and sometimes they tear in chunks. And if you want to tear it in strips like I normally do, and you're using regular paper, what I would suggest is getting a ruler, a strong ruler. It can't be wobbly, but a straight edge. So either a ruler or just some, piece of wood or something like that has a straight edge like this, and it's flat. Sorry. And they'll show you how you do that. So you just put however wide you want your papers. So I have a couple papers under here. I have 3 papers under here. You can do it with one, you can do it with a few at a time, but I maybe don't go more than 3, and you can experiment and see what works for you. But I'm gonna make it in a strip so that's pretty even. It doesn't have to be exact because it doesn't matter. But this thing, you just hold this down like this and you keep it secure against the table, so I'm pushing down. And then I take this end, let's see, you guys see that? I take this end, and basically I'm gonna pull it up away from the ruler. See that? And now I have these 3 strips. Got 3 nice strips to start with. Remember to separate them. Okay, so then you're just gonna pull it over, start again. Make sure you're pushing this down a little bit, and this, you can pull it towards, if you pull it towards it, it kind of goes a little bit more wonky. Just pull it straight away. Okay, it's really clean. Just practice doing that. If you guys need to do that, you guys can do a few pages at a time. You just strip them all up just like this, and get started. So same thing. I don't really need to show you much with this one because you know what you're doing, but the only thing to think about really is, same thing as usual. Dip all the way, squeegee all the way, right? Now what you're going to think about on this one is that now that we have a newspaper layer, it's really obvious when I put this on top. You can see the difference between this and the newspaper, right? It's kind of bright, but see how this is totally white, newspaper has print on it, and so that's one way to make sure that you've covered the ball or the pinata more than once. And remember, I'm going to show you again. I'm going to try to do thick layers on both of them. So I'm not going right next to it. I'm not going all the way on top of it, but I am going to do about halfway on top of it. Okay? So that I can get double layers. So there's double layer under here, and then I'll do the next one about right here, so there's double layer on this side. So try to do 2 layers pretty much by overlapping to get a thick first layer and a thick second layer. Okay? And then after that, we'll have to just see how thick it is. Depends on your paper. Okay? If it still feels like it's like this is pretty easy to push in. If it's still easy to push in after this, I might have to do a 3rd layer. And again, it depends on what you're putting inside. If you guys just put confetti inside, then you can do it really thin. It doesn't matter because it's just a piece of paper inside. But if you put a lot of candy in there and you want to be able to just hit it a few times, at least, then you're going to want to make it pretty thick. If you want to make it really hard to crack open, then make it really thick. Okay? So that's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and do my 2nd layer. All right?